If you think you're the prettiest thing that's ever lived and people need to look at you, then go for it, man. Go for legacy media. If you want impact, you need to look at podcasts, you need to look at Rumble shows, YouTube shows, you need to look at online media. But at the same time, there's also a huge difference between different types of online media. And I think a lot of what we've gotten in media, a lot of what we've gotten in news, a lot of what we've gotten in different things is just propaganda. You have to be able to look at information for yourself. You have to be able to discern, and you have to be able to figure out how to go get your own information. As much as I think Chat GPT and stuff like that is cool, I had one of my employees tell me this morning, oh, they're going to start putting it in Gmail and it's going to help you write your emails. I'm like, oh, so we're going to become illiterate? This is the real issue, is you have to be able to take in information, look at that information, say, is it true or is it not true? Or we're headed down the same path as that, man, where people can just lead us wherever they want to lead us.
Jeremy, my brother, welcome to the Superhuman Life.
Hey, Frank, I'm stoked to be here, man. I know we got to kind of chat a little bit in the pre-show here, so I'm really excited to be hanging out here, man.
Likewise, man. I'm a big fan of you and your show specifically. I like that you are not afraid to have a conversation really about anything. I mean, one day you'll have a pro athlete, a former ball player on. The next one you're talking politics. The next one you're talking finance. The next one you're talking personal development. I think that's kind of what we try to do here as well. I'm curious, Jeremy, I want to get a little bit about your journey that's led you to this point. I know you've had a lot of different, maybe not jobs, but you've kind of touched and you've kind of gone in a lot of different areas. How much of your journey, and please share that with us, has really created this podcast where it's like, I want to talk about all these different topics?
Geez, so I guess where do you want me to start, man? Like for me, I was somebody that I was a wrestler in school. I've always been a workout fiend. I'm short too, so I'm like 5. It depends on if I want to be truthful. I'm actually like 5'6.5", but I like to say I'm 5'8". You know what I mean? And
Dude, a whole inch and a half. Wow. Okay.
I like to give myself that inch and a half because 5'8" doesn't sound that short. But like, you know, I used to be a competitive power lifter in my 20s. So I was, you know, walking around like, you know, 5'6", 5'7", somewhere around there. And, you know, I was walking around at 215 pounds. So like, you know, I didn't find a door that I really liked fitting through at that point in time. So it's like, it's so interesting because my background is just a mix of so many different things. I'm weird in a lot of ways. I was a competitive powerlifter. I have my master's in early Roman Empire propaganda. Like I studied how the Roman emperor convinced people he was God. So like I have all these things that I'm interested in. And for me, I thought I was going to be a college professor was the real goal. And I ended up, you know, when I got out of grad school, teaching at a Catholic school, and you don't need like a teaching degree or anything like that to do that. So they put me in a room with 40 kids and it was a nightmare. I just was not ready for that situation. And I have a little bit of a temper too. So put me in a room with that many kids and see how red I get. So I did that for like 2 years. And then in 2012, my mom ended up having a really bad stroke. And it made me look at a lot of the different things I was doing in my life. And I'm like, what do I really want to do? I've been a podcast fan way back since like 2009. Big fan of Adam Curry's Daily Source Code, which is one of the first podcasts out there. And it's something I've always loved. So I'm like, okay, if I'm going to do something, let me try to start a podcast after failing at selling life insurance, selling products on Amazon, selling online marketing, whatever you could do. I just started a podcast as a hobby and it took off really quick, man. So it's like, I've done a lot of different things and I'm here because I love what I do.
Yeah, man, I resonate a lot with that. I think that's very similar to the journey for me, right? You know, not powerlifting. I was bodybuilder, not insurance sales, but I've sold everything. I mean, I started selling, you know, rainbow vacuum cleaners at 19 years old, knocking on people's doors.
We still have one of those, by the way, man. They're incredible for cleaning the air because they do, what the heck is it? What do they call it? The ozone. So we still have one of those.
Well, that was a part of our pitch, right? So we would turn the lights off in the living room and we would turn their vacuum cleaner on and shine a light on the dust coming out of the bag, right? And it's like every time you're vacuuming, realizing you're just picking this up off the floor and then putting it back into the air and you're breathing all that in. And then we turn to the water because it's a water filtration system. We'd shine the light on and be like, see, nothing's coming out of this. The key here is we'd find a stain on their carpet and clean half of it.
Oh, so they can see it. We just used it for a really bad mold problem because the ozone is incredible for killing mold. So I'm probably the first person in a long time you've talked to that owns a rainbow vacuum, but we do.
Yeah. You may actually be the first person outside of. I sold 6 of them, 4 of them to my family, and the other 2 to my neighbors. So I wasn't really successful at it, but it taught me a lot, man. It gave me the ability to really have a conversation with anybody, you know, which I know is a lot of what we're doing here, right? Podcasting is about having conversations. Jeremy, if we go back, you know, you and I are hanging out in high school. Who was Jeremy then?
The ultimate nerd, and I never found a locker I didn't fit in. You know what I mean? Like I, not that I wanted to be in those lockers. You know what I mean? I don't know how to put this. So like, did you go to public school or private school, or what was your?
I'm a product of the public school system. Yeah.
I went to Catholic school growing up, but I didn't start there. I started in public school for my first like through second grade, and I was somebody that was like really smart and like I could do things really fast. So the way they handled me is they're like, well, we're just going to give him more work to keep him busy. And I got bored because I'm like, well, this is stupid. Just challenge me. So they had a meeting with my parents and the principal, and they said, well, if he wants to stay here, he's going to don't have to go on like Ritalin or something like that. My parents were like, absolutely not. We're going to figure something out. So they ended up putting me in Catholic school. The issue is, though, it's like a super closed society. So if you're the kid coming in third grade and you didn't start there, you're never getting in. So I went to the Catholic grammar school, never getting into the friend group. Went to the Catholic high school, never getting into the friend group because it's, the same group of kids continue on. So I was always kind of an outsider in a lot of ways. And that was really, really me in high school. I was a weird kid. I liked history and stuff like that. I was into politics at like 10. So it's just, I was always kind of an adult trying to get along with kids, if that makes sense. And I was never really into the friend group because when you come into a closed society and you don't start there, you don't get into the friend group.
Yeah, and it's interesting, man, because I think now you would probably look at yourself as like one of the true ultimate networkers, right? I mean, you run this company, Command Your Brand, where you have to have relationships with people all across the globe. So, how did that early experience in school shape you into the man that you've become today?
You know what's interesting? Like if I look at it, I look at a lot of a lot of those people now, like not to sound like a jerk, but they're not really doing that much now in their late 30s. Like, like we're doing a lot of cool stuff. So like I look at them like maybe it was a benefit that I didn't get in, because I had to learn other skills, right? I had to learn how to get along. I had to learn how to make things work. I had to learn conflict resolution. And I also didn't, I guess, dumb myself down because my whole life, my parents worked from home. So I dealt with adults from the time I was like, 3. So I've always had to, I guess I didn't have to like dumb myself down to get along with kids my age, if that makes sense. And because of that, I just continued to be me. 'Cause I'm like, all right, they're not going to be happy with me anyway. So whatever. So that was at least my experience. Is I feel like I was actually able to develop faster and earlier because I said, okay, well, I guess they're not going to let me in, whatever.
Yeah, I love that, man. Let's kind of get back here to more of the stuff you're doing here today. I think one of the things you talk a lot about is this difference between finding your passion and following your passion. And I've heard you even say like following your passion can be horrible idea. And I think that would surprise a lot of people. I think a lot of people think like we're here to follow this passion and this is where, true fulfillment, happiness is going to be. Talk to us, Jeremy, about the difference between finding versus following your passion.
Well, when you look at it, I think like finding your passion, it's an active process, whereas following your passion is a passive process. Does that make sense? Like, in terms of what I mean is like when you're finding your passion, you're working at it, you're doing different things, you're trying things, you're seeing what you're good at, you're seeing what you're not good at, you're also seeing what's profitable. I think that's really important. Like you could be really passionate about something, but if you can't figure out how to make money with it, you're not going to be doing it very long unless you have a job or something else supporting you. So I think when you look at it, one of the biggest disservices that society's done us is really getting rid of the idea of like apprenticeships. Meaning, if you want to do something, you work under somebody that does that thing for a period of time. The best thing I ever did as a teenager into my early 20s was work for a house painter. Because besides not being scared of heights, I've learned a lot of different skills, right? I learned basic carpentry skills. I learned, whenever my wife wants something painted, she gets it done and she gets it done, it looks professional. So like those skills I think are really, really valuable. And it gives you some competence, but those are active skills. Like I'm a big believer in like doing work, like physical work makes you a better person. We chop wood, we do things like that around here. So when you look at that, you're finding skills and you're building skills, and maybe you're not going to do those things, but it's life experience. Whereas people following their passion, they're going to continually like trying to catch that next thing, trying to catch on, trying to, grab this whim and grab that whim and read this book and do this thing. And I'm just a big believer in it's an active working process, and you have to do some things to find what you do like and what you don't like and what's actually profitable. So that's kind of my viewpoint on it, man. I think like when you look at it, when you're finding your passion, you're causative, whereas when you're following it, you're effect, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely, man. I love that. I love that a lot. I guess, my follow up here would be with this active kind of finding, right? That was kind of your journey through the 20s, these different kind of, I tried the teaching. It wasn't really what I, what I was made for. I did
Yeah.
these different sales. I know you had some experience in network marketing, and it kind of led you into the podcasting, the marketing, the branding. When does it shift though, Jeremy, from we're finding towards we're in it? And then how does that change, I guess, our behavior on a day-to-day process?
So I think it's when you can kind of connect what you're good at and what you like to what actually makes money. And I know it sucks to stay it that way, but like if you want to continue to do something, it has to make money. And what happened was, I was doing podcasts. I had 10,000 listens in my first month. So we started to see a lot of success. And I had people say to me, can you help me with that? So we tried different versions of the business that we were doing until we arrived at Command Your Brand in 2016. And that was really where it came from. It wasn't, I was like, I was going to start a business. I was going to go out. No, I started with something I liked doing and I was good at while I had another job. And people started asking me like, how can you help me with this thing? So you start, I guess surveys are really powerful in a lot of ways, like seeing what's needed and wanted from people and then producing and delivering that thing. And that's really what we were looking at here, man, is like people were asking for this, we produce this, and we continue to improve that over time. And since we've been doing this so long, we've been one of the first to the space. We've been kind of also developing and building the space at the same time while building training programs and hiring people and everything else. And yeah, it's just come down to scaling an organization after that, which we've been doing for a number of years now.
And I guess you feel you're operating in your passion? No, I guess that's a question.
I love podcasts, man. I'm just a super nerd about them. But like, it's the fact that people ask me like, can you do this for me? That I'm like, okay, so I can make money with this thing. If I go deep into this thing and figure out how to build a business around this thing, well, then it's something that's going to work out for me. Does that make sense? Like you can love basket weaving, but if you can't figure out how to, put it on Etsy and sell it or something like that, like it's not a business. I think, and I don't know if a lot of people would agree with me, I think there is more opportunity now to make money off things you're passionate about than there's ever been in history. So I think if you can find a way to monetize it, sell it, package it, get it in front of people, then you can continue to do your passion.
Is everybody's passion going to lead to potential business? And if not, like, what would you say to the person that's like, they're going to work, in the corporate realm, they're going to have their day-to-day job, and that's going to provide them the life where then they can live in a passion that maybe it doesn't become a business ever?
So I think the tough thing about that is it's also the makeup of a person, if that makes sense. Like, even if you're passionate about something, you have to be able to do a lot of things that you don't want to do and that you're not really willing to do in order to build a business out of something. So, like, did I like doing taxes early on? No, but you got to do them if you're going to survive. Do I like selling? No. But you know what? I'm decent at it. I learned how to do a good enough job at it to build a business. So it's like, but there's some people that if they observe that, they're like, well, that's uncomfortable and I don't want to do that. I may be passionate about this thing, but because I'm not willing to do those things, I'm never going to do anything with it. So you can join clubs, you can join membership communities, you can start a hobby alongside what you already do. But unless you're willing to do certain things and learn certain skills and get a little bit uncomfortable, you're not going to be able to monetize your passion.
So what are those key character traits or skills that somebody's going to need to develop in order to take their passion and turn it into a profitable business?
I would say the first thing is the willingness to take adversity and learn from it. Because a lot of people, they'll see difficulty and they're like, okay, so I'm going to go that way because what the difficulty is that way. They're going to go the opposite direction. But I think when you look at it, it's how can I learn from this and how can I grow from this? And I think the ultimate example of this, I'm a massive football and baseball fan, but the ultimate example of this is Tom Brady. Because you look at Tom Brady and, sure, he's big. He's 6'4", but the never had a big arm, runs like he's got a piano on his back, but he's smart. And so what happened is, he didn't start till his senior year at Junipero Serra High School. He signs a deal to go play at Michigan. The coach he went to play for leaves, so then he gets stuck with Lloyd Carr. So then for his next 2 years, he's competing against Drew Henson to be the starting quarterback. So he's never the starting quarterback. Goes to the NFL, gets drafted in the 6th round, only plays because Drew Bledsoe literally almost dies on the field when Mo Lewis hits him. But you know what? He was studying, he was working, he was studying, he was working. So when that opportunity came, he was ready. And that's the difference, is these are people that are willing to show up every single day, get better every single day, study harder than the person next to them. So when their opportunity comes up, they'll make the most of it. Because you may only have one opportunity to come up in your entire life. But if you're ready for it, you're going to grab it and you're going to run with it. You look at Colonel Harlan Sanders, and the guy didn't start KFC until he was almost 70. but when he was ready for the opportunity, it was there. So that's really what the makeup is about. You don't have to be the fastest, you don't have to be the biggest, you don't have to be the brightest. You just have to be willing to put in time longer, and work harder than everybody else out there.
Yeah, I think it's what's that saying? Luck happens when hard work meets opportunity, or something along those lines. It's like nobody's ever lucky just by accident. It's like the luck that we kind of see, and it's the overnight success, right? We always hear about these, especially in the online space. You see the guy that like made the $100,000 a month. It's like that dude's on his seventh business. What you don't understand is he's sleeping on a mattress for 3 years. Like we don't ever talk about that because it's not shiny, but like that's the success, right? It's like those times. I've heard a lot of people even talk about like once they've reached the milestone, it's like, I wish I could go back to like the early days. I'm sure it was the same with you when you were probably a one man, maybe a two man show early on. Now you're managing a team. I bet those experiences or those times are that's what made me into who I am today. Right.
And that's the interesting thing about it, is because like people ask me a lot in conversations, they're like, oh, if you look back at then versus now, would you do anything different? And it's like, in hindsight, sure, but if I didn't do those things, I wouldn't be this person. Do you get what I'm saying? Like you had to go through those experiences, you had to hit your head a lot of times, you had to run into some walls because it made you more creative, it made you more resilient, it made you who you are. So as much as you'd like to change those early times, without them, you're not you. So it can be tough, man.
Yeah. I know you said you had some early success. I mean, 10,000 downloads in the first 30 days. I mean, takes some shows years now to reach those numbers. It's obviously the difference.
The world was a lot smaller in 2014 though, man. There were only 250,000 podcasts out there. So it was easier to get that number.
Yeah. Back then, I mean, I don't even think I was into podcasting till maybe around 2015. Lewis Howes was kind of the entry for me. And then I attended the first Summit of Greatness that he threw. And then I'm like, okay, there's going to be a future in podcasting for me. Curious, getting started so early, did you ever envision the podcasting space to become what it is today? You got guys like, Joe Rogan, signing $100 million deals.
You know what's interesting? And I don't know, like looking at it, I feel like I had an idea when I started that it was bigger than it was. Cause like I really idolized a lot of these people I was listening to, and I was really interested in what they're doing. So like they felt super famous and unreachable to me, which is kind of wild. I don't know, like I don't know if that makes sense. Like in my mind, I'm like, oh, these guys are, because I had seen like John Lee Dumas's early like income reports back in like 2013. So like you see what this guy's making in the podcasting world. So I had the idea that it was this big space, which if you look on it now, there was 250,000, then there's 3.5 million now. So it's like the space has changed dramatically, and there's a lot more people in it. So for me, I've grown up liking media. I've always been a big radio person and things like that. So I've always had a concept of it was going somewhere. So, but for me, I guess I thought it was bigger than it was when I got started, as funny as that is.
Yeah. And even still at 3.5 million, I mean, it's still not anywhere near where it's going to be, at least in my opinion. I mean, I think you look at like YouTube, I think there's 100 million content creators on YouTube. It's like we got 3.5 million podcasts. Like we're nowhere near the top. So when people are coming to you now and it's like they're asking you, hey, do you think I should start a podcast? Like how do you kind of respond to people that are like asking, like, is it too late to get into the game? Walk us through like some advice on people that want to jump into the podcasting space.
Well, I think the first thing is having your mindset right around it. There's a South Park episode back in like 2007 when YouTube kind of first became big, where they talk about the magical internet money, and like they think they're gonna like fart on YouTube and get famous and like make money for it. People have the same idea around podcasting now, right? They think everybody wants to sit and hear them have conversations that they have with their friends, and as much as it stinks, that's not the case. So you have to think about, number one, how long am I willing to do this for without a return? And I tell people, be willing to do that for 6 months to a year before you see any sort of a return. That's the first thing. The second thing is like, who do I serve? How small is that niche, and how do I serve them? Because so often people want to, you mentioned some of the topics I cover. I didn't start there. I started very niche, and I kind of broadened out from that. You have to serve a really small niche when you start, because you're going to have much more an opportunity to communicate to those people in the way they need to receive it, as well as to actually make an impact. Otherwise, you're just going to get drowned out because there's no particular reason for people to come to you. If you can do those things and be willing to work through it, you're going to be successful. For most people, I think running your own show is not the way to do it. I think finding other shows to have incredible conversations on is the best way to do it, because most people, it takes as much as I do, dude, it takes a lot of work to be a host, to continually have these conversations, to want to improve each and every day. And some people just don't want to do that, but they're also not willing to stick it out without seeing a lot of attention early on, because you're not going to see any attention for 6 months to a year unless you get lucky and have a big guest that shares it or something like that.
Yeah, man, that's great. God, I agree with everything there, right? I've done a lot of business coaching in the online space with online fit pros, right? These people that are building businesses through the Instagram, the social media, the YouTube stuff. And a lot of them be like, Frank, like, we see what you're doing over there with the podcast. Like, we've been very fortunate to land some incredible guests, just really by pure luck, I think, and maybe me being very intentional about getting into certain rooms, knowing that the networking is going to come out of those places. So we've landed some pretty big name guests, but I get a lot of people that see like what we're doing. They're like, Frank, should I do this? It's like, no, for one, like, you're not an expert yet in an area. Like, I love that you said you got to start niche. Like, we started porn addiction. First 30 episodes were about how to overcome a porn addiction or how to create a life after porn addiction. I then established myself as an authority, somebody that people would want to listen to on this topic, and then I can bring other guests on to talk about their topics. But if from the beginning you're trying to talk about everything, well, why would I listen to you when I can go listen to Joe Rogan? Or why would I listen to you when I can go listen to some of these other true people that, like, true experts that have been doing this for a decade plus, right?
Well, and also being true to you and your own, like, what you mentioned, like your own level of success and everything else. Like, there's too many people that are coming on here posturing. They're coming on here and they're, you mentioned Lewis Howes. There are so many people ripping him off. And there are, John Lee Dumas, there's so many people ripping him off. Joe Rogan, there's so many people ripping them off. And here's what happens. Those people don't build an audience because there's no reason for them to come over to them over the person they're ripping off. So you have to be true to yourself, right? And, you mentioned where you started with porn addiction. You start with a place where you have expertise, you have knowledge, you can have conversations about, you could be inspired by how other people do what they do, but, like, stop trying to be that other person, because there is no reason for somebody to come to you over them, because you're not well known enough. And at the same time, you're not being authentically you. So, like, what can they connect with? Nothing.
Yeah, I think it was Hermosi who said, like, there's this underlying subconscious thought in every person that's listening to a content creator, and they're asking, why should I listen to you? And if they don't know that, like, if it's not clear, and if you have to tell somebody why they need to listen to you, like, it's going to fail. So yeah, build up the reputation, put in the reps, become an expert in a specific topic, develop a small tribe and audience there. And then once you have that audience, they're going to want to know more about what drives you, what interests you, what things make you tick. And then you can kind of expand the conversation.
It's funny you mentioned Hormozi. Like, he's brilliant, but he's also kind of sneaky brilliant. Because, like, at the same time, like, I highly doubt in his personal life he dresses like he does in a lot of his media. I totally think that's to grab people's attention. So I think he's brilliant, but he's also sneaky brilliant.
Man,
do you know what I mean? Because they're like, wait, why is this guy dressing like that and doing that? I need to see what he's doing.
Well, if you look at what he did with Gym Lunch, right? Like, he sold the rights to the mustache when he exited the company. So he understands branding at a level that most people never fully be able to wrap their head around. I think it was the late Dan Kennedy, though, that said those that have recognizable facial features will make more money. So he's leaning on really a proven tactic. I mean, even Dan Kennedy himself, like, he had that thick kind of handlebar mustache. So he's definitely onto something. I do think he probably dresses like that, but he probably does it out of convenience now more than anything.
Well, I guess the fact that I turned 36 last week and I can't grow any facial hair isn't helping me, man. So I don't know.
Well, you got the good look though. I mean, you're standing on, an inch and a half extra. So people know who Jeremy is. What have been some of the mistakes that you've made podcasting? I know there's probably a laundry list there, but any big ones that have really changed you in your approach to the business side of podcasting?
Well, to the business side, I would say the biggest thing is, like, when we first started what we were doing, the company had a different name. It was called Get Featured Media. And the biggest issue I had is I jumped into a partnership without really knowing anything about partnerships. And I think when you don't understand that, when you don't understand contract law, that's a really dumb thing to do. And we ran into a lot of issues, not because either person was a bad guy, but because we wanted different things out of the business. And it's really hard to get divorced in the business world. It may be just as hard, if not harder, than getting divorced in real life. Not that I've done that, but I'm just saying. So, like, that was something that I've learned a lot from that. And now when I'm interested in things, or when I commit to things, I do a substantial amount more research, because if you don't have more knowledge, then you can't take responsibility and you can't control a situation. So, like, that's really what I'm looking at, when it comes to that. So that's one thing. The other thing that was a big learning point to me, is I'm an only child, so I'm somebody you can stick me in a room for 12 hours and I will love nothing else than working on a project without anybody talking to me and music playing. When you're running a business, you can't operate like that. So the thing I had to learn was, number one, how to learn how to work better with other people, and also to build training for different modalities. Because I'm an auditory learner. You can tell me how to do something and you can do it once and I'll never forget it. A lot of people need to see it in written form, they need to see it in visual form, they need to see it in audio form. So we had to learn how to create better company training manuals and better job position training manuals for people, because people learn in different ways. And I think what happens is, initially you make a lot of things for yourself and then you wonder why people can't do it. Well, because you haven't personalized it to them or made it in such a way that they can use it. So to me, it was, I guess, getting over myself initially and kind of learning how to see things through other people's eyes and do them in a way that they can confront. And that was a really big early barrier to staff training. And it's something that, now that I've learned how to implement it better, we get, we have better team growth. The team works better together. We get better production, but it's because I've had to learn how to kind of get over my own insecurities and the things that I didn't do well.
Yeah, man, that's huge. You talked earlier about kind of this lack of apprenticeship that we see in today's world. Everybody wants to jump right into like being a doer without having done the learning first. I've been in entrepreneurship now for 11, going on 12 years. I started my first company late 2012, I believe it was, after having a 2.5-year apprenticeship in an exact business that I went on and started. But what was interesting is that first company I ran for 5 years, I ran it as a solopreneur. It was all about me. It was never going to be a company that had any more than one, maybe two, three kind of subcontractors on a project needed basis. I never knew there was going to be a need to scale a team. When I got into the online space, though, and really with what I'm doing here today, it's like we're looking at really building and scaling up a pretty big company. But to get me from that solopreneur to what I'm doing today, I took another kind of apprenticeship role. This was a paid apprenticeship, but I had the opportunity to work with a very high level internet marketer and entrepreneur in scaling a company from 5 employees to 50 in like 11 months. It was literally like a 4-year rapid fire education that I was able to really equip myself with a lot of this understanding now, the importance of systems, of operations. Like a true SOP, you should be able to hand to somebody off the street and they can do the job just as well as somebody that's been trained doing it for 12 months. So I love that lesson. Now on the podcasting conversation side of things, like the actual doing of the work here, what have been some of the mistakes or lessons or takeaways that you've had in the 7, 8, 9 years of doing this?
That's 2014, man. That's a long time ago. Well, I guess when you look at it, the biggest thing that I've looked at is actually constantly getting better at your art form. Because I think a lot of people, like, I'll give you kind of where I came from. When I started my podcast, it started as audio only because I wasn't initially comfortable on video. Now video is a big part of what we do, and also I hadn't had a lot of these conversations, so I'd make a note sheet that had 35 questions on it. So it felt like a jail cell interrogation for the 4-person in front of me. And sure, we got some early listeners, and I'm shocked people were interested in early content, but they were. And I was constantly trying to get better as an interviewer. So what I actually did is, number one, there's no substitute for the number of conversations you can have. So for me, I didn't feel like I was a great interviewer until I'd done like 500 conversations, because you start to develop like a sixth sense, I guess. Like when somebody answers a question, but they're not answering all of it, you can sense it, you can see it. You're like, oh, there's more there. So I'm gonna figure out how to do that. At the same time, when somebody doesn't answer your question, a lot of people are uncomfortable with figuring out how to, number one, just ask the same exact question again, or figure out how to answer it in different ways. Like, hey, you didn't answer my question. This is what it was. Or how are you feeling when blank? So that's learning those skills. I guess you'd say they're soft skills, but they're some of the most important skills to having a podcast. And I also observed a lot of people that were interviewers and observed what they do and observed how they do it. Like, look at people like Oprah, look at people like Larry King, look at different people I admire. I think Tim Ferriss is an incredible interviewer. And when you look at that, you see what do they do and how do they do it? The biggest thing they do is really good open-ended questions. You never want to give somebody a question they can answer yes or no to, because that's where the conversation ends. So it's really good open-ended questions where you're learning about feelings, you're learning about experiences and things like that. Another thing that I really do, which I found is a real game changer, is when I'm prepping for an interview, I find the interview that someone else has done with that person that I like that interviewer, I've heard of that interviewer, and I'll listen to that interview, not the whole thing, the first like maybe 5 or 10 minutes. And the reason I will do that is not actually for even what they're talking about, but how they do it. Because you'll have some people that answer a question short. You have some people that answer a question long. You have some people that need more prompting when you ask a question. So that way, you know, kind of how to preface the conversation going into it because you know how to prepare for that person sitting in front of you. So for me, it's been all about improving my art form as an interviewer.
Yeah, and I love that you look at it that way as well, because that was probably a transition that I made maybe after 60, 70. You know, when you're in the early stages, man, it's like you're having conversations with your buddies. You're like, anybody that's willing to come on the show, like, let's do it. But at the same time, you're like, I got no clue what the hell I'm doing. I'm showing up with 30 questions, just like you said. It's like, okay, you answer that one, let's move on to the next one. It's like, no, media is an art form, right? Like, people are listening to this during their downtime. They want to be entertained. They want to be informed at the same time. So it's kind of that balance of infotainment, right? We're giving value, but we have to do it in a way that's going to keep them engaged. And I think that's where the art form component kind of comes into it. For me, one of the biggest changes or things that has improved me is the ability to have conversations with people in everyday life. So what has been the experience for you as 1,000+ professional conversations? How has this made you a better communicator in your wife's, with your wife and your other relationships, even communicating with team members and even just communicating with your buddies? I'm sure Jeremy is like the life of every party now because he's got just this like bandwidth of information that he's willing to share.
I'm actually not. I'm naturally an introvert, man, which is wild seeing like
Do you see
everything.
that a lot in podcasts? I notice a lot of podcasters identify themselves that way.
Dude, I'm an introvert. I always have been. Like, and it doesn't mean I'm afraid of people or like, whatever. Like I've spoken on stages in front of thousands of people and I enjoy it and I have a great time for it, of it. And it like, makes me feel like I'm alive. But like my natural state is I like doing things on my own. I think that's why I love podcasting myself. Like, I'm always walking around the house with one playing or sitting in the office with one playing or something like that. Like I just enjoy my me time as much as it is. I'm actually naturally an introvert. But I have found that good interviewing skills have helped me so much in, conversations because as an introvert, you can kind of like put that hat on. Does that make sense? As like an interviewer, and those situations that like maybe you're not great in or maybe you're not as comfortable in, because you have the interview skills, you can get through it and you can make it work and you can see success because of it. Um, with my wife, I've always had an incredible conversation, so I can't say it's made it better or changed it in any way because it's hard to explain. We're like different sides of the same coin, and we always have been. So we're kind of very in tune in that way. So that's always been an incredible relationship. But for me, doing interviews and doing podcasts has maybe as an introvert able to show up better in certain situations. It's made me able to speak on stages. It's made me able to, hold my own in conversations with different people. But I'm naturally an introvert, man. So I'm not going to be that person walking around the party and be like, "Hey, Frank, how are you? Nice to meet you." Like, what are you going to do? Like, that's just not me, man. But like, if somebody, comes up to me and I'm going to try and have a great conversation with them, but I feel like it has made me better at communicating, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely, man. I'm not the life of the party either. I would identify myself probably as an introvert. Like, I need my alone time. I'm the guy at the party though that I want to find the person that thinks and operates like me, and let's go in the corner and let's have a deep conversation.
Oh, dude, I get along with those people.
Right. And I think also, most people, when you're communicating with them, it's like they're waiting for their next opportunity for them to talk. And as a host of a show, it's like you need to be present, engaged, and listening, because you need to be able to follow up on what was just shared. So the presence within the conversations, for me, it's like I just feel so much more closer and connected with people because I'm really having conversations. We're not just talking at each other. It's like, no, we're actually having a conversation about something meaningful here as well. So that's great, man.
You know what's interesting about that too? Because like, like you get different types of guests. So like you've probably seen this. Like you get a conversation, you're like, "Ooh, I'm gonna have to work on this one." Meaning like you have to like ask more questions to keep the conversation going. Does that make sense? So like, you've probably done it as much as I have. Like sometimes you get a guest that you're like, if I didn't do something, this episode would be 15 minutes. But we got through an hour because I was there and I figured out how to kind of steer it and have a great conversation. That's something that's extremely valuable in real life because you can take a conversation and you can get a lot more out of it. Whether you're on a golf course or whether you're at a party. I thrive on a golf course, even though I'm not a very good golfer, because like one-on-one, I really enjoy my time with people. Large groups, even, which is wild, even though I think I speak on big stages, large groups aren't really my thing.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of with the academics, so people that are coming from like an academic background, PhD, scientists and stuff like that. They want to have a question asked to them that's specific to their scope of knowledge, and then they want to move on to the next one. Like with you, experienced podcaster, storyteller, it's like I can just kind of tee something up, and it's like you're going to take it and you're going to know how to kind of navigate there as well. So yeah, I've definitely noticed there's a difference in how you have to interview certain type of people. I want to pivot here just a little bit back to some of your core expertise and experience and talk about marketing versus sales. You know, leaning into another Hormozy quote here, I think he said, "You only sell because you don't know how to market. You only market because you don't know how to sell," or something along those lines. But you had a third piece in there as well. This is really what you do with Command the Brand, which is the PR or the public relations component. Talk to us about the relationship between PR, marketing, and sales, and why all businesses need the three to truly scale up.
Well, everybody wants everything to be marketing. That's how it works, right? Like everything in the world is marketing, and you just need a high ticket closer, man, and you're done. That is not how the world works. See, when you look at it, public relations, marketing, and sales are three components that you need to make anything work well, and they're kind of a sequence. If you're not selling, you take a look at marketing. If your marketing isn't converting, you take a look at PR, and PR is always primary. Like if I had my last dollar, I would spend it on PR and getting known, because public relations, a public is a type of audience. I think when people hear that, they're like, "Oh, it's like relating to the public at large." It's not. It's actually a type of audience. It's a specific term, and it's how you relate to that public. Do they know you, like you, and trust you? And what you're actually trying to do, what you're actually trying to sell, is you're trying to get an audience to have a certain idea about you, your company, or what you're doing. And you can have company PR as well as personal PR. Like if you treat people like a dick, that's bad personal PR for you, right? So you have to also think about, how am I treating people, as well as how do people experience my brand? What do people get out of my brand? What do people think about my brand? So what you're really looking at there is getting people to know you, like you, and trust you, and think you are the authority. And then what you can do is any of these pieces you're creating, like podcast content, a lot of times is PR. What people are seeing on social media a lot of times is PR. What you do with that and how you get it in front of people, the actions you do to do that, that's marketing. And marketing can be paid or unpaid, right? If you're taking a piece that's created, a video, and you're then positioning it a certain way, well, that you've now taken a PR piece and made it a marketing piece. And when you create interest in marketing, that's when you're moving into the sales area, right? Because like somebody raises their hand and says, "I'm interested," now they're a lead, then you're working on sales. But if you're not looking at, how does my public trust me? How do I get them to have the right idea? Then you can look at marketing to that public so that it actually converts, right? Because people can't spend money with you if they're not aware with you, if they don't trust you, which means they're not going to raise their hand and say, "Talk to me," to become a sale. So those three things have to work together, or you're really not going to see what you want in your business, man.
Yeah, man. The amount of online marketers and internet marketers, that heads just exploded when you said PR was the most important thing. Because
Well,
I
and
think that there's
everybody wants PR to be marketing, by the way, as well. And it's if you have they can work together. Sometimes they can get thrown under the same umbrella, but if you don't have both, it's not going to work.
okay. So talking to the content creator, right? The person that's building a personal brand on social media. They've never looked at it as PR though. But I love your take on it, right? It's like the content that you're creating is actually the PR. It's the actions that you're doing behind it though that are driving the marketing. So what do most people not understand that are trying to build an online brand? What do they have wrong about the branding component?
They think they can spend marketing money on a shit sandwich. Do you know what I mean? Like they're like, it's the ugliest piece of content you've ever seen. It doesn't add value to anyone, and they're just going to promote it, and they expect to get leads. So what you have to really do is position it the right way, get it seen the right way, make it aesthetic, make it a message that can be received. Then you can worry about promoting it, because that image can be a valuable image is a PR action. Now, what you're doing with that, maybe the copy you're writing with it, maybe the way you're putting it out there, that's a marketing action. But you can't take something terrible and unaesthetic and not interesting and promote it. I think a lot of times people just, they want to buy 10,000 Instagram followers and put stuff out there and then wonder why nobody takes action on it, because you don't actually have authority. People don't actually believe you. It's the authority you get from PR and what you're saying and doing, and then you're marketing it and promoting it to that audience you've created by PR, and then hopefully getting sales out of that.
Now, how does PR in the online space, right? So we've been talking here about like the Instagram, social media stuff. I think for me coming into today, I'm like, PR, that's like TV, right? That's like getting on news stations. And there's a place out there, right? And I think
There is,
kind of
but it's
legacy
dying.
media,
It's dying.
it's definitely dying. So talk about like what's the, not the balance here, but should people look at any legacy media in terms of the PR side of things, or should you just focus all in on the online?
It depends how big your vanity muscle is, man. If you think you're the prettiest thing that's ever lived and people need to look at you, then go for it, man. Go for legacy media. If you want impact, you need to look at podcasts, you need to look at Rumble shows, YouTube shows, you need to look at, online media and things like that. But at the same time, there's also a huge difference between different types of online media. Because you'll get these guys that'll pitch in your inbox and say, I can get you on Forbes and Inc. and all these different things. And a lot of times they're press releases and a lot of times they're paid promotions and things like that. That devalues you. When people see that you had to pay for something and you didn't get it as an earned piece of media, even if you had an agency do it for you, if it's not earned media and it gets out there, it devalues you. So at the same time, I think the major thing about online media, like podcasts and things like that, is Apple Podcasts released their stats a couple years ago, and they said when you're looking at podcast episodes, people are sticking around for about 80% of them. You're not getting that with television. They've been lying about their numbers for years anyway. So I think the thing is people are making decisions that they're interested in this media and they're actually watching it. I don't have cable. Most of my friends don't have cable. So like legacy media just doesn't have the impact anymore, man. And at the same time, you're not having the length of conversations you're having in a podcast or in other places where you can really get to know somebody. You can really get to see who they are, trust them. And I'll tell you what, it's really hard to fake who you are for an hour in a podcast. Eventually it's going to come out. So I think the way new media is, it's an incredible opportunity. And I just think legacy media, man, it's just, they've padded their numbers for years, and it's just, they're dying because they've also lied to you with the content they put out. It's rough. It really is.
Yeah. And I think, we don't need to get too political here, but I think probably the last,
political you want to get, man.
And I think the last couple of years have really exposed, the agenda behind a lot of these media channels. And I think people are beginning to kind of see the truth, and they're beginning to get more educated around some of these things.
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. It's people have been tired of media lying to them forever. And they're just like, well, then why would I spend my time on you? Like, I've heard Joe Rogan talking about different things, or I heard Lewis Howes talking about different things. I trust them. I believe them. They have conversations. So I think that's where we've gone with things, is people are they're tired of it, man.
Yeah. Forecasting out here, the next 3 to 5 years, what do you see happening in the podcasting space and online? And how are you guys making decisions and taking actions today to position yourself to be on top?
So the thing that we're looking at is, I think, it kind of started with podcasting. But when I started, it was way more audio than video, right? Like I'd probably say it was like 80-20. And it's swinging the other way now, where you're probably seeing a 60-40 to video. So I think really where we're going is podcasting and YouTube and Rumble and Odyssey and all these different platforms are becoming something called new media. So I think that's really the direction it's going. So, are we placing our clients on great podcasts? Sure. But we're also looking at, really good YouTube shows, which may not publish as podcasts, and really great shows on Rumble, which may have gotten kicked off of YouTube or may have gotten kicked off of Apple Podcasts or things like that. So that's what we're looking at, is we're looking at, where can our clients continue to have incredible conversations that are going to be impactful, make a difference out there. Like we have some clients that have been canceled because of some of the things they've said the last couple of years. So, we're kind of the only medium left to be able to help them in this world. So I think that's what really excites me, and that's what we're continually keeping our pulse on. I'm also listening to a lot of different things in kind of the podcast and new media world. Like there's a podcast called Pod News that I listen to every day. It's like 3 to 5 minutes, and it tells you all the big things that are happening in podcasting and new media, so you can kind of keep your pulse on it. So for me, I'm seeing podcasting kind of move into what is new media as these things are kind of emerging. And I think in the next couple of years, we're going to see this major shift in media because if you look at, I don't know, this isn't political, but I don't know if you've seen like recently that Fox News had let Tucker Carlson go. And one of the major most people were actually at a point where they think they were getting like 3 million people viewing him. Those numbers dropped to about 1 million now. And a lot of people were getting Fox Nation in order to watch it because they don't have cable. So I think what you're going to start seeing is these channels aren't going to be able to command what they're commanding to be on DirecTV and to be on these different things. And people are going to start going into different mediums. Like Tucker Carlson said, hey, I'm going to start doing my show on Twitter. So I think we're really seeing something big changing and disrupting, and the media doesn't quite know what to do with it yet.
Yeah, and then you see companies like Daily Wire out there that are just massively blown up. I think I heard they're a nine-figure, $100 million a year company. And I don't know if you know PBD down in South Florida with Valuetainment. I mean, he's got big visions, man, and I see them kind of being right up there with the Daily Wire kind of size of things. So
Well,
yeah,
every brand has to become a media company now is really what we're seeing. And I think it's not where we were a few years ago, where people had to borrow other people's media. Now they're becoming the media, and that's the difference.
yeah. Wow, this is great, man. Dude, I could talk to you for hours, man. We might have
Well,
to have you
now
back.
you're just hitting my jam, man. I love talking about that legacy media is dying, and we are the media now.
Tell me how your degree in early Roman Empire propaganda is shaping some of these views that you have here today.
So when you look at it, politicians lie, people in media lie, and you have to be able to. The really big thing you have to learn is the ability to tell truth from fiction. And I think that's something people really struggle with because they look at how much do I like this person? How much do I trust this person? Blah, blah, blah. And they can't just look at statistics or things like that. Because how the Roman emperor worship cult started in the early, like 17 BC and lasted until, I think, 472 or something like that AD. So that's almost 500 years of people worshiping the emperor because Augustus looked at how people looked at Alexander the Great and he's like, all right, I'm going to make people believe I'm him for the next however many years. And everybody applied that because it was something that had worked and been effective. So basically, you have to be able to see through the propaganda. And I think a lot of what we've gotten in media, a lot of what we've gotten in news, a lot of what we've gotten different things is just propaganda. You have to be able to look at information for yourself. You have to be able to discern, and you have to be able to figure out how to go get your own information. And I think as much as I think Chat GPT and stuff like that is cool, I had one of my employees tell me this morning, oh, they're going to start putting it in Gmail and it's going to help you write your emails. I'm like, oh, so we're going to become illiterate? Like, this is the real issue is you have to be able to take in information, look at that information, say, is it true or is it not true? Or we're headed down the same path as that, man, where people can just lead us wherever they want to lead us.
Yeah, man. Wow. I want to back
Well, no,
on.
I think AI can be helpful, but I think when we start losing our language skills, that's a huge problem.
Well, yeah, man. It's funny, right? Because we even like cell phones have made us illiterate to numbers.
Yes.
I think you said you're 36, so I'm 39. So I grew up
Yeah.
in a space where it's like you had a catalog, like you knew all your friends' phone numbers
Yeah.
by heart. 813-985-5655. That was my phone number growing up. I guarantee that there's not an 18-year-old listening to this podcast. If there's an 18-year-old, probably not an 18-year-old walking the earth that could tell you his parents' phone number. But I still remember mine from being a
so I
child.
remember like growing up, when they changed our area code, dude, that was like the hardest fucking thing because we were like the 201 area code here in New Jersey forever, and then we became the 973, and like I had to rememorize everybody's numbers. Like people now don't know about that. That was really hard to learn a new area code.
It's so funny you say that area code thing because Tampa's really grown over the last couple of years.
My parents live down there.
They've actually established a second area code. Well, I would still dial a lot of people's numbers. Like I just
Is
dial
it like
my dad's number.
727 or what are you dialing?
No, it was 813.
Okay.
But now because I'm calling from an 813 number, we have a second area code in Tampa. I think it's 267. Even
Yeah.
if you're calling from an 813 and I'm calling another 813 number, I have to put 813 before I put the rest of the number in there. So really,
My parents are in Largo, so everything in Largo and Clearwater is like 727. Yeah, so
awesome, man. I spent a lot of time in Largo. Jeremy, this has been amazing, man. Tell us where we can learn more about you, the brand, the book, all the things that's going on. We'll drive it home with our last question here.
yeah, so they can find out more about me over at jeremyryanslate.com, or if they want to hear and consume more of what we talked about today, they can grab my brand new book, which is called Unremarkable to Extraordinary. They can get that over at getextraordinarybook.com. And I like to say it's the personal development book for people that hate personal development.
Awesome, man. Yeah, we'll get all that plugged down in the show notes. Last question, Jeremy. We end every single episode with this. Title of the show is called The Superhuman Life. For me, it's a belief system. It's how I show up in the world every single day. And it's coming from the place first that I think that we're all put here for a purpose. This is tied to my faith. But I think knowing that there's a purpose for your life isn't enough. You need to be intentional about your development and then how you bring that purpose to the world in service of others. So that's how I define living a superhuman life. But Jeremy Ryan Slate, as we end today's conversation, how would you define living a superhuman life?
What's funny is I did a podcast episode last week, which was one of my most popular in like years. And it was about like how, if you want change in the planet, it's about starting with your family. And so for me, it's really about like creating a big enough life that I can have time with my girls and time with my wife and everything else and kind of create the life we want to create and create an incredible environment for them. I know maybe it might not be the best definition, but for me is if I can create some incredible things for my family, that's my version of a superhuman life.
No, brother. It is the best definition for today and for this conversation, man. So appreciate you and your time. Guys, make sure to grab the book. We'll link it down there. Make sure to check out the podcast. And guys, if you get enjoying these, leave us a 5-star rating, a written review. But we love you guys. We'll see you next week.